Hey, it's Fiona here with the last episode of our Inner Vivid theme, How to Live? I've really enjoyed the conversations with our Inner Vivid thinkers about this question of choices. Just how do we live? How can we get on with each other? What impacts our decisions? Are we always aware of those influences? Can we get to the bottom of it all? Ever heard of a moral compass? Just how expensive are they and where can I get one? What colours do they come in? Right, okay. Now, we've looked at religion, what they maybe have to offer in this area, and wondered about purpose. We even checked out what it is to be our true selves. How did you go with that one, I wonder? Anyway, could it be that checking in with questions about choice and life brings us back around to ideas about spirituality? Is it possible that spirituality can influence decisions about how to live and the choices we make in response to the actions of others and how we treat people around us? Well, we asked our Inner Vivid team about this idea.
People talk about a moral compass. What is yours and what does that do for you?
Yeah, the idea of a moral compass is, I guess, a basic set of orientations to how you move through the world and relate to other people.
So I guess the moral compass for me refers to something that can help guide us through challenges, just everyday challenges, but also really complex ethical and moral challenges as well.
Well, a compass kind of directs you in the right way forward, or at least it should, I guess.
I think we all have a moral compass because we all have that sense of right and wrong. At some point, we've all got a line that we wouldn't cross. And I guess everybody's line is in a slightly different place.
The metaphor of the moral compass works for me personally. I love walking, I love exploring. There were times when I lived in Scotland, I used to go and climb mountains and I would literally have a compass. There were times when I climbed mountains, I'd forget the compass and I'd get into trouble. So the idea of a moral compass helps me.
Moral compass. I mean, I like the phrase true north. What is your true north? And it's interesting, in my home, we've got a dog, and when my wife Kate is at home, Kate is the dog's true north. And so it's very funny to watch, when the dog sits on the couch, she will listen to where Kate goes in the house and will orientate her head in that kind of way. And I really like that. Each night I generally look back at what I've done during the day, and I pray for those people that I have spent time with and pray for blessing, whatever that means, but it's usually for good in the life of that person. And sometimes when I think about that interaction, I think, I could have done that better. And sometimes it will actually cause me to go back to that person and say, oh, I'm sorry I did this. Other times I think that was okay. But I think the golden rule is not a bad place to start in terms of moral compass. Do to others as you would have them do to you, but then ramp it up a bit more. How can I use the little gifts and abilities I have, the little life that I've been given to live, to make a difference for good? And that reframes things, to make a difference for good, not to get the most money or get the most power, all of those things, to make a difference for good. So probably those two things.
So my moral compass is very much built into my spirituality and my faith within myself. I don't feel that it guides me out of fear. It's more out of a sense of love and compassion for other people. Is what I'm about to say or do going to hurt somebody else? Is it going to hurt myself? Is it going to put somebody else into a vulnerable position? Is it going to be helpful? Is it going to be kind? Am I acting out of anger or impulse or frustration? If I'm going to do any of those things, I probably ought to rethink what I'm about to do. I guess that's my moral compass.
I don't think my moral compass is ever pointing in just one direction. I think it moves around a bit as I move forward in my journey. The direction might change, or the right way forward might change. And I think a moral compass is something where you allow the unknown to guide you. Now, whether that's unknown is a belief in a God or a higher power or just a belief in something bigger than yourself. That's what a moral compass is to me, directing me in the proper way forward in how to deal with situations as they arise.
I think our moral compass is comprised of a lot of different things. It can take time to really hone and refine, but I think it's made up of our individual values and beliefs, also our life experience, whether we've had any traumatic events happen to us, we learn from that. And I think it comes back to our individual levels of empathy and compassion as well. So everybody's got different levels of empathy and compassion, but I think all those things contribute to our moral compass, and ultimately we can use that as a guide to help us navigate our day-to-day lives.
My moral compass absolutely is contextual in that it comes from the way I was brought up, the stories that I was told as a child, the behaviour that my parents expected from me, behaviours that got rewarded when I was a kid or a teenager. I think I'm pretty lucky. I have two parents who worked pretty hard at being effective parents, at loving me and bringing me up to be a decent human being, I hope. So I think they've given me a pretty good moral compass. That certainly included some Christian formation, but it's not just that, it's about the way they lived, their ideas of service to the greater good.
What is the moral compass for me? I'd say it's my faith tradition, along with a whole load of other things. The other things being things like rational thought and experience. But the literal faith tradition gives me a sense of, you might say, ordering or purpose in the world that I see. I think this is an interesting question, because if you'd said to me, well, you're not Christian, would you still care for refugees and homeless children? I hope my answer would still be yes. I hope it's not just this book that's telling me that I should care for them. That means I care for them. But I do think that the faith tradition I'm in helps flesh that out and helps me see nuance where I might not have seen nuance.
Look, I do think that in my life growing up as a Christian, the Jesus that I find in the Gospels absolutely is a moral compass for me. And I think part of that is asking that question about how do I treat others, how would I want to be treated, but also the idea of how are we treating the most vulnerable people in our community. To me, that's a really important question in any particular situation that I'm in. How might this impact on those who are vulnerable? I think that's really helpful in shaping lots of decision making, particularly often at a higher level. It may not be those personal decisions or actions we have to take, but I certainly think my Christian faith and the things I've learnt from the life of Jesus really help me think about what's right and wrong and how I want to live my life in those particular instances. To me, the idea of serving others is also important. I think that's a bit countercultural as well. Often I think we live in a society that is all about look after yourself, but that isn't what makes for the good life or make people feel happy. And often people can get everything in the world and lots of money and fame and all those things, and it makes them miserable. We know that helping others, serving others is much more effective in helping us feel that we have purpose and meaning in life.
Moral compass. As far as I can understand my moral compass, I think it is driven by a deep sense of being connected to all that is, and that sense that I really don't want to do harm to the system. So my moral compass, if we're going to call it that, is how do I live in harmony
with everything.
My moral compass is to really try to just be kind to each other, to try and actually do what seems to be right in whatever situation it is, but certainly not to do any harm, never to be cruel, never to be cowardly. You know, these are all things that, you know, are really sort of part of your basic DNA. If you can stand up for somebody and they deserve to be stood up for, and that's where your moral compass comes in, then stand up for them because they may be struggling to do it themselves. So yeah, I think it's just basically a case of trying to remember that, you know, again, we don't know what they're going through. All we can see is they're another human being who needs support or whatever, and that's the time to actually put your money where your mouth is, really, and act upon it. I think it helps, probably more than helps, it probably more steers your decision making when you're reacting to people. And sometimes you need to actually take a step back and check your moral compass, because, you know, it's very easy to do a knee-jerk reaction to an incident or something, and until you've really sat back and said, well, actually, what caused that? What was the reason behind that particular set of scenarios happening? And I think it's a case of recognizing that sometimes you've got to pause before you act. So I think that's what it does for me. It makes me sometimes at least try to pause before I act. I'm not always very good at it.
I think as a person I do have that, and I think having that sense of who you are and what you want to be in the future and what you need to do, I think are the best drivers of your own lives. Otherwise, if you allow other people just to direct you and pull you and drag you to where you don't want to go, you end up in a wrong position. And so I think having a vision, having a direction yourself, I think would be better, because whatever you achieve, you'll be content, because this is who you are, this is what you dreamed to have, and when you achieved it, you'll be very happy. So, yes.
And yeah, I would say I have some form of moral compass that tries to orient myself towards other people in a way that's respectful, in a way that honors who people are, honors the difficulty of what it means to be a human being, that honors the process of living and struggling to live. And that includes ethical commitments about respecting people's rights, being inclusive. And I would say that things like that are kind of my basic moral compass. For me, it's important that a moral compass is somewhat minimalist, that it's not overly prescriptive either for myself or for other people. That yes, there are some firm senses of what it means to live together and what's right and what's wrong to live together. But I also think it's important to be able to keep most questions open, and that living is so difficult and so fragile that we need to give each other space to figure things out.
Peter, that is such a generous place to leave it, with the offer of grace from one to another. Living is so difficult and so fragile that we need to give each other the space to figure things out. I heard that a moral compass needs to respond to the context, that people can be open to growing and changing and taking on new information. I heard that tapping into spirituality can provide a basis for developing a personal moral compass, that a key faith figure like Jesus or someone else might provide inspiration or ideas for a way to live and a way to approach others. It seems that helping others is way more than a morally correct thing to do, that it might just be a key for happiness in the helper. And Memore really hit it home, that when we have a vision of our own, it means that we are not being swayed by the influence of others, that we make our way towards our vision and purpose. So, I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and that you might start some of your own around this key issue of how to live. What do you think?